Well, hello there, you amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. I hope you are all well. I hope you're better than me. My voice is I'm really struggling with it today, but we're going to get through this video. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience. I know I had a live yesterday that was fucked up because I'm an idiot. I did mean to move it, but I didn't move it, so apologies there. I have cancelled any upcoming live for now until my voice and everything is back to normal. But you're looking absolutely amazing. This video was sent to me, and this is the video that we're going to be going over today. It's on a channel called Truth and Neurons, and this looks at organised crime and the Idaho 4 case. Now, the link to this video is in the description of my video. You can see a disclaimer on there, which the person who has done it has said that they will allow fair use of it for the purposes such as criticism, comment, news report, and teaching, all of that, right? So we can use it. I haven't watched the entire video yet, so some of this is going to be the first time that I hear things said. What I will say is, just because I go over a video like this, it doesn't mean that I agree with it. It doesn't mean that I disagree. There might be proportions of it that I agree with and other bits that I don't. But we're going to go through it together and see if between us, because those of the people that have actually watched this, they're quite impressed with the things that are in it. So we're going to watch it together. Let's check it out.
Hi everyone, it's Ruby G. Welcome to Truth and Neurons. Today we're going to be examining the hard realities of how organised criminal enterprises handle internal problems, and why the patterns we've identified in this case align perfectly with professional clean-up operations rather than random violence. Let's start with the fundamental question. Why would organised crime orchestrate what appears to be a multiple homicide with systemic cover-up? The answer lies in understanding how these organisations operate. They operate as businesses first, violent organisations second.
So, with respect of the Idaho 4 case, we know that there's a lot of people who are covering the Idaho 4 case, and there's a lot of people who are doing a lot of work, looking at different aspects of this crime. One person in particular who you all know well is going to be Jay Ombre. Obviously, Jay Ombre he's gone kind of balls deep in the more organised crime sort of version of this. And look, maybe this video will convince me that this is more about organised crime and that there is more of a, I don't know, more of a chance that it could potentially be that. Because what I will say at this stage is I don't think that this murder was as complex as organised crime related. It does have the how can I say, the downside is there are elements on the peripheral of this crime, such with some of the parents being involved in narcotics in that world, that means it's very easy to lean into that. And obviously this area as well, and the fact that narcotics are problematic across these kind of states, you know, again, it makes it easy to lean into it. The thing that I struggle with is finding a direct connection between any of the individuals in this house and organised crime. I'm not saying it's impossible, but through my studies of things inside this case, I can't find anything that directly connects this specific property, these specific people, to organised crime. You know, there's things happening all around it, but just because things are happening around it doesn't necessarily mean that they are up to their necks in it. But look, again, this video may convince me otherwise.
Action serves a business purpose, and violence is simply another tool for protecting profit margins and organisational security. Consider the most logical scenario. Someone within the social circle discovered information that threatened a larger criminal operation. Maybe they were skimming money. Maybe they were cooperating with law enforcement. Or maybe they simply knew too much about the wrong people. In organised crime, knowledge is liability, and liability must be eliminated. But here's the crucial part. You can't just eliminate one person when multiple people might have access to the same dangerous information. You have to clean the house completely. This explains...
See, this is where I have an issue, because this individual here, and again, this is not being disrespectful to the person who did this video, but you have to clean the house completely. You know, knowledge is liability. But we have an issue here in that you have two surviving roommates, and there already seems to be issues between them two, where there's no solidarity between them. You know, Dylan Mortensen turns up at the sentencing hearing and does what she does. Bethany Funk nowhere to be seen. So it doesn't turn up because apparently she's got a toothache or whatever, and just sends somebody else in to read something that she's prepared for it. You know, that doesn't, to me, sound like people who are involved in real organised crime and working underneath that organised crime umbrella.
Selective targeting pattern. Professional criminal operations don't kill randomly, they kill strategically. The victims weren't chosen because they happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. They were chosen because they represented specific threats to ongoing criminal enterprises. The survivors weren't lucky, they were useful. They were
useful. Were they useful? How were they useful? Again, knowledge is if knowledge is a liability, then in my opinion, if this was, say, connected to the cartels, for instance, they'd have just killed everyone in the house. They'd have killed everyone in the house. Fuck it, who cares? Just kill everyone. But let's just see what they say here, because this is...
because they could be controlled, because they had value as witnesses who would support the official narrative, or because they were already part of the organisation. The 8-hour cleanup window makes perfect sense from this perspective. Professional criminals understand that physical evidence is their biggest enemy. They know that modern forensic science can extract DNA, that blood spatter patterns reveal the truth about what happened, that digital evidence can expose communications and planning. 8 hours isn't just opportunity for cleanup. It's necessary time for professional evidence destruction.
And look, it is right that we have this... let me just move my fat head from over here to up here. Maybe that'll make it a little bit... So look, young adults might be forced to delay reporting of crimes, provide false information to authorities, help clean up crime scenes, establish alibis for perpetrators, monitor police activity. Which, look, because we have this 8-hour time delay, it then becomes problematic. In my opinion, the people who are most likely to be able to manipulate these individuals, however, are going to be law enforcement. That's with respect of Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk. I don't personally think that these two are people involved in organised crime. I don't think that their crimes so much are about being involved in the murders. I believe that their crimes involve knowing what happened in that house prior to the 911 call being made. You know, perhaps they had been involved in drinking and shit themselves and didn't report when they should have done, and that put them in a position with law enforcement where, because of that delay, because of the questions that were then being thrown at them, that made them easy targets for law enforcement to put the thumb screws on them and make them do and say what law enforcement needed them to do and say. That's because that law enforcement here, working alongside the university, is, in my opinion, the overall control in this Idaho 4 case. I don't think it's organised crime at all. I think this is law enforcement and the college, the University of Idaho. But let's carry on. Let's carry on. I may be convinced yet.
Think about the level of knowledge demonstrated by these witnesses. They casually discuss how deep cleaning would make DNA evidence difficult to locate. They understand forensic timelines, evidence collection procedures, and investigation methodologies. This isn't information you learn in college courses. This is specialized knowledge that comes from experience with criminal investigations or coaching from people who understand the system intimately.
Is it? I don't think it's really rocket science to sort of think that if we clean the place up, we may have got rid of evidence. Again, I think the issue with respect of the cleaning up is that I think that these individuals were moving around this house and knew what had happened inside this house before the 911 call had been made, and they were trying to tidy or clean up where they had been and where they had disturbed. You know, we heard and saw in documentation that there was evidence of cleanups, you know, the latent footprint. I think this was just because they had gone around that house. I don't believe that for 8 hours these two individuals didn't know what had happened in this house. I don't believe it for 1 second. And again, what I struggle with is believing that if this was some sort of cartel issue, that the cartel wouldn't have just fucking wiped out everyone in the house. Fuck them. We don't need anybody. We don't need any of them. They're not going to care about fucking Dylan Mortensen going to the police and saying she saw someone with bushy fucking eyebrows. Or you'd leave one individual, because then you haven't. Why do you then need two? Because one of them's hardly fucking said a thing. And we're already publicly thinking, well, you got one who's apparently potentially got exculpatory evidence, and the other one who's the mouthpiece. Well, then just leave the mouthpiece and kill the other one then. The fact that there's two of them is, to me, the most telling piece of information there. And again, I'm not saying I'm right. It's my opinion. And you may not like it, and you know what you can do.
The pre-crime deep cleaning is particularly telling. This wasn't routine housekeeping. This was deliberate elimination of existing forensic evidence that might complicate the post-crime narrative. Professional criminals know that DNA or fingerprint evidence in the house before the murders could be used to establish prior connections between victims, perpetrators, and locations. By conducting thorough evidence destruction beforehand, they ensure that any forensic evidence found after the crime supports their chosen narrative rather than revealing inconvenient truths about ongoing relationships and activities. The protection theory that investigators explored, that the perpetrator knew her and wanted to protect her, is exactly how organised crime operates. They don't kill assets who can serve their purposes. The surviving witnesses weren't random victims who got...
Yeah, but if you're cleaning house, you're cleaning house, aren't you? Again, this is, I just don't know. And again, I don't mean this in a disrespectful manner. I rarely don't. But with respect of Dylan Mortensen being as public as she has and going into the courtroom and doing what she did, and then having a GoFundMe set up as well, and bringing that is attention. Is bringing attention. And again, from an organized crime perspective, if this was something that was an absolute cleanup, you're actually going to go into a house and execute 4 people who are liabilities, and the ramifications of that, you're going to be involved in making sure that this goes away. She ain't going to have to set up a fucking GoFundMe. She isn't going to have to, because she would have been paid to do so. If this is organized crime and you're looking at these sort of levels, then she doesn't need to GoFundMe to get money. She ain't going to need to, mate. And and I don't think that anyone involved in the organised crime world would be advising her that that is something that she should be doing and bringing that kind of attention down on her. So I can't, at this stage, back up that theory.
There were controlled assets who played specific roles in the operation. Their job was to provide believable witness testimony that supported the single perpetrator theory.
They didn't. Yeah, their story has been a bone of contention for 2.5 years. Their story has fucking changed and manipulated and been fucking. And what again, the issue is here is this is more about law enforcement manipulation. They go to law enforcement and they're interviewed and tell a story. They have another interview, they tell a story. That as time progresses, you then interject elements that you want to become, which the bushy eyebrows, for instance. Do you know what I mean? The way in which law enforcement planted that information in there, and then Hitler would be the eventual person to push that into what would have eventually gone to trial, to say, yes, that is something that remained consistent throughout, when in reality it wasn't. So this is, again, about the state. This is about people manipulating them. That wasn't ever their story. That was, they told a story, and the people around them manipulated that story and pushed it out bit by bit. And at one point, doors are shut, other point, doors are open. Then they hadn't seen people, and they had seen people. Yeah, frozen shock phase, and they weren't there on their phone. So that is an organised crime and a very solid strategy, with, where they've had hours and hours. And the 8-hour delay, if you're talking about organised crime, the biggest part of that is organised. Organised. You wouldn't have had, in my opinion, this massive gap. There wouldn't have been the questions. It wouldn't have been as messy as it was. Wouldn't have been that way. I feel that this entire situation was far too messy. But again, I could be wrong.
While avoiding details that might expose the true scope of the criminal enterprise. Here's another hard reality. Organised crime has sophisticated understanding of how law enforcement investigations work. They know that once investigators focus on a single suspect theory, they become psychologically invested in proving that theory rather than exploring alternatives.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly. And I still believe that Brian Koberger, someone just pointed the finger at Brian Koberger. Pointed the finger at him. That's how I feel that went. And then they reverse engineered the entire case to fit him. But he chucked the towel in. And, did he chuck the towel in because he's the person who did the crime? Or did he chuck the towel in because he was scared of being executed and he was convinced by his counsel that that was a very, very highly probable outcome of this situation? You tell me.
That witness testimony, no matter how implausible, will be accepted if it supports the preferred narrative. They also know that physical evidence can be manipulated or destroyed if you have enough time and knowledge. Most importantly, they know that prosecutors prefer cases they can win over cases that reveal uncomfortable truths about systemic corruption. The plea deal arrangement fits perfectly with organised crime methodology. Trials are dangerous because they require presenting evidence, cross-examining witnesses, and exploring alternative theories. All of these activities risk exposing information that criminal organisations need to keep hidden. Plea bargains, however, end investigations immediately. They prevent discovery processes that might reveal the true scope of criminal activity. They protect ongoing operations by ensuring that only predetermined information becomes part of the official record. Consider the financial implications. If this was connected to drug distribution, money laundering, or other high-profit criminal activities, the potential losses from exposure could be enormous. Killing a few people to protect millions of dollars in ongoing revenue isn't just logical from a criminal perspective, it's essential.
Which again, I can kind of come on board with this feeling when you know that you had this huge deal going on with the University of Idaho in their acquisition of Phoenix University, which was worth upwards of $750 million. So there was things going on in the background, and we also know that Steve Gonsalves himself had made a nod to the fact that there was decisions being made around this case that were being impacted by more of a business mentality rather than just simply focusing on there's been a murder and we need to focus on getting justice for these victims. He spoke about capital decisions being made, and so yeah, there is elements to this that kind of sits in there where you can kind of come on board, but I think that still fits in with if this was an internal fraternity fight, if you've got systemic violence happening amongst the students of this university and that spirals out of control, and all of a sudden you've got yourself students who have killed each other, then you can still have the same outcome where the university that is about hiding what is happening in their umbrella or under their umbrella, hiding it so that doesn't have ramifications on their business deals. And I think in this sense, that holds as much weight as what this being attached to, say, some kind of cartel hit or organised crime hit. I suppose it depends how you... Because this individual, if they're talking about organised crime in that we're talking about the University of Idaho, and the University of Idaho going down the route of hiding what is happening under their roof, if you like, for financial gain, and that is organised crime, then yeah, I'm fully on board with this, because I think that I think that there's some truth in that. I think that fraternities and sororities have for many years, there's been deaths that have been at the hands of hazens, for instance, that have gone unpunished. There's been a lot of students, especially across universities worldwide, that never get looked into. This secrecy.
Business practice. The cost of professional cleanup, witness management, and legal manipulation is minimal compared to the cost of losing established criminal enterprises. The organised crime connection also explains why certain families might have influence over how the investigation was conducted. Criminal organisations don't just operate in isolation, they develop relationships with law enforcement, prosecutors, judges, and other system participants. These relationships aren't necessarily corrupted through bribery. They develop through social connections, political contributions, business relationships, and community influence. When powerful interests want an investigation to reach specific conclusions, they have subtle but effective ways to ensure that happens. The defence team's trauma during court proceedings makes sense. If they discovered evidence of systemic corruption extending beyond or separate to their client, experienced criminal attorneys understand that sometimes they're not just fighting individual cases, they're up against entire systems designed to produce predetermined outcomes.
Again, which there's elements of that I can get on board with. We know that corruption exists. We know that there can be manipulation within the courts. We know that. But this was a very, very public case. You know, there was eyes on it all over the place. And what I'm going to say, if you want to watch the rest of that video, the link is in the description of this video. So you can go and watch it. I'm going to kind of just conclude my thoughts here. And that is, look, with respect to the Idaho 4 case, there's a lot of people, like I said at the beginning of this video, there's a lot of people doing a lot of work, and they do well. That video was very well put together. It's very well thought out, and that individual obviously has considered certain things about the Idaho 4 case. I'm in a position now where, for me, Brian Kohberger has pled guilty to this crime. It doesn't look like he's going to appeal. Doesn't look like he's going to. Ann Taylor hasn't spoken at all, but she is a defense attorney, and she has now gone into the private sector. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense for her to make any kind of public statement. It does still leave the window of thinking there could potentially be legal strategy here. Maybe they're not saying anything because there could be something later on in the winds, but I'm personally losing faith in that there will be any appeals. I don't think that there will be at this stage. I am more so than because what we're now the 20th of August, and again, no appeal whatsoever. And the more I think about this deal, the more it makes me consider that Brian Kohberger had some connection to what happened. My only issue is we are left with so many questions that weren't answered. A lot of questions that were left unanswered, and those questions don't just go away. I felt that Cy Ray had some information that could have shone some light on it, but Cy Ray himself, he has not come out and spoke. Now, again, I've said this a couple of times that I've been made a sort of, it'd been stated that he was covered under some degree of gag order still. I don't know the accuracy in that at all. I can't see how Cy Ray would not be able to speak at this stage. At the end of the day, this is over. From a legal standpoint, this is over. So Cy Ray should, in theory, be able to at least come out and say where his stance is at this stage, but who knows? Maybe he will. Maybe he will. But with respect of what happened in the Idaho 4, what do I feel is the most likely thing that happened here? Is it possible that this was to do with organised crime? I don't believe that this was anything to do with any form of cartel hit whatsoever. I don't believe it. Don't believe this was cartel related. Yes, these kids had things on the peripheral where they had parents who were involved in certain things, but I don't see this as anything to do with cartel. If Brian Kohberger was involved in this, I believe that there was potentially one other person involved, and it's somebody that we have spoken about previously. A very strong potential of that being the case. And I believe that the case was reverse engineered. Someone probably pointed their finger. I think there was some other issues in the background that they needed to keep fucking from coming out. They didn't want to be made public, and it could have been quite damaging if it became public knowledge that certain things had happened, which I'll go into on when I do a final Idaho 4 video, because this will come to an end. It is coming to an end. But let me know where you are. Organised crime? I don't believe so. I don't believe this was organised crime. Not at all. But I do believe that there was a lot of powerful people, a lot of rich people around this that had things that happened and they wanted to cover things up. But I could be wrong. Love you all. Mwah.